I knew something was wrong before I even stepped outside. You ever get that weird feeling, like the universe is clearing its throat to warn you? That was me standing in my kitchen at 6:12 a.m., coffee in hand, already annoyed at nothing in particular. But when I finally slid open the door and walked out to my driveway, I understood exactly why that little alarm bell had been ringing in my brain. There it was, the red Toyota RAV4, parked, diagonally, across, my driveway, again. I just stared at it, steam rising from my mug, my slippers half soaked with dew, and my sanity sliding dangerously close to the edge. This wasn't a shock anymore. It was becoming a ritual, a morning offering from the neighborhood menace herself, Karen. And the car wasn't simply parked. No. It was positioned like she tried performing a 37-point turn, got bored halfway through, and said, "You know what? Close enough." I sighed, not loudly, not dramatically, just the sigh of a man who already knew how his morning was going to go. For context, I had only moved to this neighborhood 3 months earlier. Freshly divorced, trying to rebuild, trying to find peace. I picked this quiet Arizona suburb because it looked calm, friendly, and stable. The kind of place where people wave at you while walking their dogs and bake muffins for new neighbors. Turns out muffins were a lie, and driveway warfare was the local sport. But let me back up for a second, because the first time this happened, I genuinely thought it was an honest mistake. I was leaving for work, walked out with my travel mug and laptop bag, and saw this same red RAV4 parked on my driveway like it owned equity there. I knocked at the door of the house directly across from mine. She answered. And listen, stereotypes are bad, but some people work really hard to embody them. She opened the door wearing a velour tracksuit, holding a tiny fluffy dog that clearly hated everyone, and she had that facial expression. The one people make when they open the door expecting a package but instead find a person. "Yes?" she said, with a smile so fake it should have come with a barcode. "Hi," I said. I'm pretty sure you parked in my driveway." "Oh, that," she replied. "I was just dropping off something to the neighbors. I'll move it in a sec. Reasonable enough, right?" But a sec turned into 20 minutes. I missed my early train. I got to work late. My boss gave me that look. The one that says I hope this doesn't become a pattern. Yeah. If only I knew. The second time she parked there, she claimed she didn't see the driveway. It's a driveway. You could park a fire truck on it. Third time, I was in a hurry. Fourth, I thought you were out. Fifth, no excuse at all, just a huff, a hair flip, and the world's slowest walk back to her car. By the 12th time, I wasn't even surprised anymore, just tired. So tired. I pulled out my phone, took a few pictures with the timestamp feature, and then knocked on her door. Again, she opened it, sunglasses on despite the sun barely rising, like she was protecting her eyes from the brightness of her own self-importance. "What now?" she asked. I gestured to the car. "I need to leave for work." "You can wait," she said. "Actually, I can't," I replied. She smirked. "You know, some of us are flexible." I just stared at her. "It's my driveway." She shrugged. "Driveways are shared community space." I blinked. That made less sense than her dog wearing a sweater in the middle of June. "That's not true. Look it up," she said, and closed the door. And that's when I realized something. Karen didn't move through life repeating facts. She moved through life repeating whatever benefited her at the moment. A few days later, things got worse. She started leaving notes on my door about nonsense HOA violations. A garden hose visible from the street, trash cans placed too close together. My welcome mat was non-compliant with neighborhood aesthetic guidelines. Newsflash, it said hello. That's it. If that's non-compliant, then so is breathing aggressively in her direction. I started asking around, and everyone had the same response. "That's just Karen. She does that. She's been on the HOA board for years, probably since the dinosaurs." One neighbor even whispered, "Careful. She made the Millers move." Made people move? Great, just great. I tried to keep the peace. I really did. I tried being polite. I tried ignoring her. I tried getting up earlier to avoid the parking wars. Nothing worked because, like any true suburban villain, Karen thrived on control. Then came the morning that officially broke me. I walked out to the driveway, and the RAV4 was parked so close to my garage door that the sensor wouldn't open. The garage made this sad, struggling noise, like it wanted to lift but physically couldn't because her bumper was practically hugging the door. I knocked. Again. Karen opened. Again. "You're blocking my garage," I said, trying hard not to sound like a man on the brink. "I'll move it when I finish my coffee." "No, I need to leave now." She smiled. Patience is a virtue. And then she closed the door. I swear I saw the universe itself roll its eyes. That evening I decided this wasn't a parking issue anymore. This was harassment, a power play, a territorial battle I didn't sign up for. So I did what any engineer would do. I gathered data. I downloaded an app that imprints the date, time, and GPS coordinates onto photos. I captured every angle, every instance. I annotated everything. Duration she parked, weather conditions, how far she overlapped onto my property line. I built a spreadsheet, color-coded, with categories. Casual viewers don't know this, but the moment an engineer opens Excel in their personal life, someone else is about to lose. Meanwhile, Karen escalated in her own petty way. A scratch mysteriously appeared on my car. My mailbox had something smeared on it I can only describe as aggressively brown. My lawn decor was moved around. Little things, small annoyances, but timed perfectly after each confrontation. And then, just when I thought I had seen every flavor of her chaos, she did something that pushed me from annoyed to determined. My daughter came over for dinner. She pulled into the driveway, stopped, got out, and stared at the RAV4 blocking us in yet again. "Whose car is that?" she asked. "It's complicated," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Why don't you just tell her to stop parking there?" "I have," I said. "And?" She didn't. My daughter crossed her arms, her teenage disappointment levels reaching nuclear fusion. "Dad, you're literally an engineer. Solve it. Solve it. 2 words, 2 syllables." And suddenly, they echoed in my brain like a divine revelation. That night, I walked out to my driveway with a flashlight. I studied the layout, the angles, the distance from the street, the property line, the sprinkler system, the open sky, the wiring access from my garage. And somewhere between pacing in frustration and muttering to myself, an idea hit me so cleanly, so perfectly, that I literally stopped walking. It was beautiful. It was elegant. It was 100% legal. And it would end this nonsense once and for all. If Karen wanted to treat my driveway like a public parking lot, fine. I would give it an entrance gate, a real one. A mechanical, sensor-based, smartphone-controlled, engineering-approved boom gate. Not petty, not illegal, not aggressive. Just effective. That night, I went straight to my laptop. Measurements, blueprints, product comparisons, safety sensors, city codes, HOA restrictions, electrical requirements, solar power options. I researched everything. Turns out, driveways are private property. I can install a boom gate as long as it stays within my property line, doesn't block the sidewalk, includes proper safety sensors, has emergency manual release. Guess what? I checked all 4 boxes. I found a commercial-grade model used in small business parking lots. Heavy-duty, weatherproof, sleek black design, solar-powered, smartphone app included. It wasn't cheap, but neither was therapy, and this felt like therapy with moving parts. At 2:41 a.m., I placed the order. When the confirmation email came through, I felt peace for the first time in months. Karen wanted a battle? Fine. But she didn't realize who she was fighting. Not a pushover. Not a scared neighbor. Not some guy who would eventually give up and move out. She picked a man who designs systems for a living. She picked an engineer. And the next chapter of my life, and this story, was about to get very interesting. The boom gate arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a delivery driver who looked like he wanted to ask what kind of trouble I was planning, but wisely didn't. 3 massive crates sat on my driveway, like industrial treasure chests, heavy-duty steel posts, a 12-foot aluminum arm, a solar panel, wiring thick enough to survive a small apocalypse, and the control unit, sleek, solid, and heavier than the guilt Karen should have been feeling. I opened the crates right there in the driveway, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited. My engineer brain was humming like a caffeine-powered generator. Documented harassment? Check. Legal loophole? Check. Battlefield ready. I texted my 2 engineer friends, Dave and Hector, who responded with the enthusiasm of kids hearing there was free pizza. They showed up Saturday at 8 a.m., sharp, tool bags in hand, eyes sparkling the moment they saw the equipment. Dude, Dave said, kneeling beside the crate, this is gorgeous. This is overkill, Hector corrected, but he was already touching the boom arm like it was a newborn. It's necessary, I replied. 3 engineers, 1 driveway, 1 mission. We got to work. The first step was measuring and marking where the gate posts would sit. It needed perfect alignment, exactly 6 inches inside my property line, clear of the sidewalk, no obstruction of public right-of-way. The city code was clear, and I followed it like scripture because I knew Karen would weaponize the smallest mistake. By 9 a.m., we started drilling into the concrete. That's when her blinds snapped open across the street. I didn't even have to look to know it was her. You can feel that kind of energy, the kind that radiates disapproval so strong it probably causes local plant life to wilt. At 9:13 a.m., her front door opened. At 9:14, she was stomping across my lawn. What do you think you're doing? She demanded. I wiped some dust from my hands. Installing something, I said. You can't put that here. It's on my property. Driveways are shared community space. Still not true, I replied. She pointed at the equipment. This looks industrial. It's residential approved. Sparks practically shot from her eyes. Let me see your permit. You're not the city, I reminded her. I'm on the HOA board. The HOA doesn't govern driveways. Her face twisted like she'd tasted something sour. This violates the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I walked over to the crate, grabbed a printed copy of the city building code and handed it to her. Section 4.302. Private driveways may contain controlled access equipment so long as it lies entirely on private property. She didn't read it, she just glared. You can't do this, she whispered, like she was genuinely offended that the universe wasn't bending around her wants. Then she turned around and strutted back home, her dog yapping at us from the window like backup vocals. An hour later, a police car pulled up. I couldn't help laughing under my breath. The officer rolled down his window. We got a call about unauthorized construction. I handed him the same folder I handed Karen. Permits, property line documents, printed city codes, timestamps of the delivery. He scanned the papers, nodded, and said, "Looks good to me." Then he added, "You might want to consider the petty neighbor discount." I chuckled, already taking it. He drove off. Karen watched from her porch, arms folded so tight she was probably cutting off her own circulation. By noon, we had the mounting post anchored. By 2 p.m., the control box was secured and powered. At 4, the solar panel was mounted, and by sunset, the wiring was complete, the safety sensors installed, the pressure plate tested, the smartphone app connected, and the gate stood ready like a mechanical soldier guarding my driveway. The moment of truth came around 6:45 p.m. I pulled out my phone, tapped the raise button, and the boom arm lifted smoothly, silently, perfectly. Dave and Hector genuinely applauded. It felt like the climax of some dramatic engineering documentary. At 6:47, the gate lowered, sealing the driveway like a fortress. And at 6:48, Karen stormed out of her house again. "This is harassment," she yelled, marching right toward the gate. "No," I replied. "Parking in my driveway for 3 months was harassment. You're creating a hostile environment, only for people who try to enter my property. This is against HOA rules. Driveways," I repeated patiently, "are private property." She stomped her foot, a literal stomp. "Well, I'm filing a complaint." "You do that," I said. She did. Within 2 hours, I had 4 emails, one from the HOA accusing me of unauthorized modification, one from Karen claiming my gate endangered community safety, a second from Karen claiming the boom arm threatened children, a third, also from Karen, claiming I'd illegally installed a weapon. A weapon. "Lady, it's a parking gate, not a trebuchet," I politely replied with scans of the city permits and a note. Per state and HOA laws, homeowners have full rights to modify their driveways, so long as the construction remains on private property. Silence. Sunday morning, I sat on my porch with coffee, enjoying the sweet serenity of my boom gate gleaming in the sun. Around 9, Karen marched out again, fully dressed in athletic wear despite the fact she clearly hadn't tape-broken a sweat in years. She walked straight toward the gate. I raised an eyebrow. "Good morning." She ignored me and attempted to walk around the side of the gate. But I had already anticipated that. A line of decorative boulders, a landscaping upgrade fully permitted, blocked both sides. Not a wall, just obstacles strategically placed exactly where her ego wanted to go. She huffed and went back home. 2 hours later, she returned, with reinforcements. This time, she brought a man wearing a neon vest, a clipboard, and the unmistakable energy of someone who thinks attaching a laminated badge to his belt grants him superpowers. "I'm with the city," he announced. "Cool," I said. "Show me your ID." His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I wasn't aware I needed to show it. "City employees have ID," I replied calmly. "Karen called me," he said. Not an answer, not remotely. I crossed my arms. "Let me guess. She told you this gate is against city code? Well..." He hesitated. "She said you were constructing an unauthorized barrier." I handed him the folder. Again, permits, code printouts, property line surveys. He looked everything over. His shoulders slumped. "This is actually correct." "I know," I said. He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, he's allowed to install this." Her jaw dropped. But it ruins the look of the neighborhood." He shrugged. "Aesthetics aren't a legal argument." She made a noise halfway between a gasp and a squeal, then stomped home again, defeated but still plotting. And plot she did. That evening, at exactly 10:23 p.m., my motion cameras caught Karen creeping across my driveway with a flashlight. She tiptoed around the boom gate, inspecting it like she was trying to find a loose screw that would invalidate my existence. Then she whipped out her phone and started taking pictures, dozens of them, from every angle. I watched from my camera feed as she squatted, stood, leaned, bent, crouched, and zoomed like she was photographing a crime scene. Problem was, the only crime was trespassing. On my property. At 10:23 p.m., recorded in HD. The next morning, she escalated again. She approached me while I was hosing off the driveway, her face redder than the tomatoes she grew illegally in her front yard planter. Boxes. "This isn't over," she said. "It could be," I replied. "All you have to do is stop parking here. I park where I want." "No," I corrected. "You used to park where you want. Now you don't." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you've won?" "Not thinking," I said. "Knowing." Her nostrils flared. She stormed off. At noon, she sent another email to the HOA demanding an emergency meeting to address my dangerous construction. At 2 p.m., she tried filing a complaint with the city. Denied. At 3 p.m., she called police again. They already knew the file. At 5 p.m., she called the fire department claiming the gate was a fire hazard. 2 firefighters came, checked it, nodded, and left. By 8 p.m., Karen was pacing her driveway like a general planning her next attack, and at 11:56 p.m., she attempted something bold. My camera caught her approaching the gate again, this time holding what looked like a small toolbox. She kneeled beside the base and pulled out a wrench. She tried loosening bolts. She tried prying the cover. She tried shaking the post. Nothing budged. Heavy-duty industrial bolts don't care about suburban villains with $9.99 toolkits. She growled. Actually growled, then gave up and stormed away. The next morning, I printed a photo of her tampering with the gate and attached it to a polite email addressed to the HOA and the community safety officer. Subject line, unauthorized interference with private property. No accusations, no commentary, just facts. And facts, when presented calmly, are devastating to people who rely on drama. But the real show, the moment everything tipped, happened the following afternoon. Karen decided she wasn't going to be subtle anymore. She got in her car, started the engine, reversed, and drove straight toward my driveway. A direct confrontation. She rolled right up to the boom gate and tried to force her way in by inching forward. The sensors detected her car. The gate stayed down. She revved the engine. The gate didn't move. She honked. Still nothing. She got out of the car, marched up to the gate, and yelled, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, "Let me in." I stepped out onto my porch with my coffee. "No," I said. "This is illegal." "No," I repeated. "You can't keep me out." "Pretty sure I can. I have rights." "Yes," I agreed, "but none of them include my driveway." She screamed. Actually screamed. A noise so dramatic it caused a flock of birds to take off from a nearby tree. At that exact moment, half the neighborhood stepped outside. Casual, curious, entertained. And that's when Karen realized she wasn't just losing control of my driveway. She was losing her audience, her power, her reputation, and the gate, silent, strong, unbothered, stood there like the physical embodiment of every boundary she'd ever ignored. Her meltdown was inevitable, but the real consequences? Those were still coming. Karen didn't show up the next morning, and honestly, that worried me more than if she had been out there screaming at the gate again. People like Karen don't disappear. They coil. They scheme. They gather their energy like a storm waiting to strike when the skies look clear. By noon, I'd received 4 emails from her. The subject lines alone told a story. Formal complaint. Fire safety violation. Neighborhood disruption. I will not be ignored. I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I was ignoring her. Because I didn't need to say a word anymore. The gate said it for me. At 3 p.m., the HOA president knocked on my door. Now, this wasn't one of those nightmare HOAs with power-hungry retirees. This was a middle-aged woman named Teresa, who had a job, a family, and a personality that radiated, "I don't have time for nonsense." She stood on my porch, arms crossed, clipboard in hand. "I assume you know why I'm here," she said. "I can guess," I replied. She sighed. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Karen has been blowing up my phone non-stop. But before we do anything, I need to see what's actually going on." I led her to the driveway. She stared at the boom gate with an expression halfway between fascination and concern. "That's new. It's legal," I assured her. She smirked. "That's what Karen said about her plastic flamingos, so forgive me if I need proof." I handed her my beautifully organized binder. Permits, photos, timestamps, emails, the works. She flipped through it slowly, page by page, document by document. Then she closed it, exhaled deeply, and asked, "She parked in your driveway 12 times? "Documented," I said. "And she sent you fake HOA violations?" 3 fake ones, 2 real ones, but incorrectly applied. Teresa pinched the bridge of her nose. "This woman is going to give me gray hair." She looked at the gate again, then at me. "You're within every legal and HOA boundary. I can't penalize you. She has no case." "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me yet," she replied. As if summoned, Karen stormed out of her front door like she'd been waiting behind it for the perfect dramatic moment. "You!" she shouted at Teresa. "You need to order him to take that thing down." Teresa turned, hands behind her back like she was talking to a petulant toddler. "Karen, I've reviewed everything." "And," Karen snapped, "and he's done nothing wrong." Karen blinked. "Excuse me? The gate is completely allowed. Permits checked out. It doesn't violate any HOA rules." "That's impossible," Karen shrieked. "You're supposed to protect us from people like him." Teresa raised one eyebrow. "People like him?" Karen stumbled over her words, realizing she'd stepped into something she hadn't meant to. "I mean, rule breakers." "He hasn't broken any rules." "But it's ugly," she insisted. "It ruins the vibe of the neighborhood." "It's a driveway gate, Karen," Teresa replied. "Not a haunted house." Karen gasped. "I don't have to stand here and be insulted." "No," Teresa said calmly, "but you do have to stop harassing him. I haven't harassed anyone." Teresa pulled out the binder and flipped to a page. "Is this your handwriting?" "The note about his garden hose?" Karen crossed her arms. "That was a legitimate violation." "No, it wasn't," Teresa said. "Well, he deserved it. For what? For being difficult. He asked you not to park in his driveway." Karen's lips thinned into a hostile line. "And you, instead of stopping, escalated," Teresa continued. "You made this personal. You created this situation, and now you're upset because you lost control." It was dead silent. The whole neighborhood had somehow drifted into the street. People walking dogs, watering lawns, pretending to check mail. Everyone was watching. Everyone had opinions they'd never dared voice. And Karen knew it. "This isn't fair," she whispered, voice trembling with a kind of fury I'd only seen once before, when she accused the mailman of stealing her coupons. "No," Teresa agreed softly. "It's not. But it's also not unfair. To him." Karen shook her head. "You're all against me." "Karen," Teresa said gently, "you're not a victim here." The words hit her harder than any gate ever could. Karen spun around, marched to her car, and slammed the door so hard her own dog barked at her through the window. She sped into her driveway, slammed on the brakes, and sat there with both hands gripping the wheel, breathing heavily. Teresa handed the binder back to me. "We're going to have an HOA meeting," she said. "Not about your gate, about her." "She's not going to take that well," I said. "She never does," Teresa replied. "But the neighborhood is tired." And she was right. Because later that evening, same-day feedback started pouring into my inbox from neighbors I barely knew. "Thank you for installing the gate. She's been harassing people for years. You're a hero. I wish I thought of that. You have no idea how many of us are cheering for you." It wasn't that they wanted conflict. They wanted peace. And apparently, the only thing standing in the way of that was Karen. The next day, Karen tried one last trick. I caught her standing in front of my gate, holding a bright yellow tape measure, muttering numbers under her breath, squinting at the ground like some sort of deeply confused surveyor. I walked outside and asked, "Can I help you?" She ignored me, still measuring. I leaned against the post. "What you doing?" "Looking," she snapped. "At what? Violations. Which ones?" I asked. She pointed at the ground triumphantly. "This is illegal." I looked down. She was measuring. A fallen leaf. "Are you having a stroke?" I asked. "It's debris," she said. "You can't have debris obstructing the sidewalk." The leaf, by the way, was on my driveway. I bent down, picked it up between two fingers, and tossed it into my landscaping. "There," I said. "Solved." Her eye twitched. "This isn't over." "Yes," I replied softly. "It is." She opened her mouth, ready to launch into a tirade. But something behind me distracted her. People were watching again, not pretending this time, not hiding behind fences or mailboxes. Watching openly, boldly, tired of her. She seemed to shrink under the attention. For the first time in months, Karen didn't have control, and she knew it. 2 days later, the HOA meeting took place. I didn't attend. That was a deliberate choice. This wasn't my fight anymore, but everyone else did. The meeting, according to multiple neighbors, lasted 3 hours. Voices were raised. Evidence was presented. Screenshots, videos, emails, testimonies from families I didn't even know she had bullied. When the meeting ended, Karen left the community hall with her head down, shoulders slumped. The next morning, her flamingos were gone. The wind chime, gone. The illegal tomatoes, gone. For someone obsessed with rules, she had been breaking a lot of them. At 11 a.m., an official HOA email was sent out to the entire neighborhood. Effective immediately, homeowner Karen, last name redacted, is removed from the HOA board. Her reign was over. And the funniest part? No one celebrated loudly, no one gloated, everyone just exhaled. Peace returned like someone had turned down the volume knob on reality. And Karen, she didn't leave, she didn't move, she didn't apologize. She simply stopped. Stopped parking where she wasn't supposed to. Stopped writing fake violations. Stopped screaming at neighbors. Stopped patrolling the streets like the sheriff of suburbia. She retreated into her house like a dragon slinking back into its cave. One afternoon, not long after everything settled, I was washing my car when she walked over, slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wild animal. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. Her face was neutral. "Your gate," she said quietly. "Yes, it's nice." I blinked. "Thank you." She nodded once, turned, and walked back home. No apology, no explanation. But her tone had changed. Her posture had changed. Her behavior had changed. It wasn't victory. It wasn't friendship. But it was peace. And as I watched her walk away, I realized something important. Setting boundaries doesn't make you the bad guy. Setting boundaries shows other people how to treat you. And sometimes, the only way to fix a problem is to engineer a solution. In my case, that solution was 12 feet long, made of aluminum, ran on solar power, and never raised its voice, but it got the job done. Every morning now, I tap the app on my phone, the gate lifts smoothly, and I drive out to work in silence. No drama, no yelling, no delays. Peace, finally restored. And sometimes when I see the gate in the rearview mirror, I smile, because it reminds me of something my daughter said. "Dad, you're literally an engineer. Solve it." And I did. The driveway is mine again. The neighborhood is calm. And Karen? Well, she hasn't parked in my driveway once since the day that gate went up. Mechanical justice, suburban harmony, and a lesson I'll never forget. Sometimes the most powerful word in the world is a simple, quiet, well-designed no.